Enemies are like the bread and butter of video games. Like, imagine what the Mushroom Kingdom would look like without a Goomba. I don't even want to go there. Needless to say, they play a critical role as they're not just an obstacle or a challenge that you face, but they also help flesh out the world and make it feel alive. And sometimes you can even get slightly emotionally attached and feel super guilty when you have to beat the living daylights out of them, so I'm sorry for that. Either way, enemies have been floating around my mind rent-free lately, and that's probably because I've been in an enemy craze recently for Dewdrop Dynasty, which, if you don't know, is my whimsical Metroidvania inspired by Ocarina of Time, Paper Mario, and Hollow Knight, which you should totally wishlist if you haven't. I appreciate it. Now, if you tuned into my last devlog, you'll know that I've been mostly working on level design and world artwork. And the great thing is that a huge chunk of the world is done and complete, and it makes me very happy. But a lot of these rooms are kind of empty, so let's fix that. Today I'm gonna make some enemies and show you the process of what it looks like for me, and I'll give you a hint, it's perfect. So starting off, I do what is probably the most important step that you could possibly do, and I'm not even being sarcastic, that's brainstorming. Whether I'm just sketching on a Chipotle napkin or maybe on my computer, it really doesn't matter as long as I'm sketching. It's just how you get the ideas out. I recently got some new office space. Here's a 2-second tour. And with this newfound office space, I found that I love using a dry erase board. Having a large area to just sketch on is awesome, and it kind of makes you feel, official. Now, sometimes I have a hard time coming up with ideas, and so I do one of two things. Either I make a large word map, like a word bubble thing, or I play with markers like they're action figures. This second method actually works really well, but it can feel a little cringe sometimes. So using these methods, I sketch out as many ideas as I can, and once I feel like I have enough, I usually jump straight into the next stage, and that's prototyping. This is generally when I make the pixel art for the enemy, partially because as an artist I can't stand placeholder artwork, and also because the enemy design can also slightly change the concept of the enemy. For example, when I made this concept of an enemy that follows you around and tries to attack you, I didn't know what that fully looked like, but once I created these star characters, it made me realize that I could have them dash at you, kind of like a shooting star. So once I have some base artwork for the enemy, I jump over into Godot and I start to program them. So I kind of built this template for hitboxes and damaging the player and all the stuff for the enemies. So it's pretty easy for me to get a working enemy in the game pretty quickly. Like I don't know what this bookshelf's doing, but it's in the game. And from here, I just try to build out the behavior that I came up with on the dry erase board. The beautiful thing is that every time I make an enemy, I can use that behavior for another enemy. So if I have an enemy that's a similar idea, I can just completely copy it, and it saves a lot of time. And this brings up a really interesting point about enemies that don't underestimate the power of making enemy iterations. For example, you can have an enemy like the snake that walks left and right, but then you can do an iteration where it doesn't just walk left and right, but it also shoots a projectile out of its mouth. And already you just made a subtle tweak, but it totally changes the way that the player interacts with it. And by having different enemies in different rooms together, you almost create these individual puzzles that are really fun and challenging. Anywho, after I play around with these behaviors, sometimes it takes a while to dial them in, but eventually I get to a point where they're not super jank. Ignore this fish, ignore it. It's at this point that I get to do one of my favorite parts, and that's the polishing. So this means I go back and I'll animate the enemy. For example, these jumping fireball guys, I really wanted them to like dive like swan divers, so I did that. I then play around with the sound design and particle effects, anything that really make the enemy feel like it's a part of that world. And finally, I work on balancing stats and parameters. It's really hard to understand how difficult an enemy is going to be until you just start playing with them in a level. And this can sometimes be the most time-consuming part, but it's also the most rewarding, seeing them in the world, running around and thriving. I guess not really thriving because you end up shooting them, but you get the point. And that's the process I've been doing for the last couple weeks. It's pretty fun and rewarding, and sometimes I can even make a couple enemies in a day. And seeing them finally populate this world makes the game feel, I don't know, makes it feel like a real video game. And that's not all I've been working on. There's tons of new art in the game. There's some new abilities, some new secrets, some new NPCs. It's just content at this point. My next goal is to wrap up all the boss fights in the game. It's probably the most important aspect that I've kind of neglected until now. The few fights that are in there already are probably one of my favorite aspects about the game. So I'm excited to work in these final fights and see what you all think of them. With that said, I'm desperately trying to work as hard as I can to finish this game by summer, especially with the threat of Silksong on the horizon. It scares me. And what also scares me is not knowing where to start when it comes to learning math or programming. But luckily for us, we have today's sponsor, Brilliant. Brilliant is where you learn by doing, with thousands of interactive lessons in math, data, analysis, programming, and AI. And one thing I really like about it is Brilliant helps you build critical thinking skills through problem solving, not memorization. So while you're building real knowledge on specific topics, you're also becoming a better thinker. Not to mention that Brilliant makes it easy to learn anywhere right on your phone, with fun lessons that you can do whenever you have the time. Whether you're diving into a new topic or doing a quick practice session, you can always level up on the go in just minutes. Brilliant's growing number of programming courses are a great way to build foundations and learn real-world applications. Get familiar with Python and start building programs on day one with a built-in drag-and-drop editor. Learn essential coding elements from loops and variables to nesting and conditionals. And most importantly, develop your mind to think like a programmer and begin to write complex programs to build games and applications. I mean, hey, you got me at games. With that said, if you don't know where to start, Brilliant is a great start. And to try everything Brilliant has to offer for free for a full 30 days, visit brilliant.org/Goodgis or scan the QR code on screen, or you can just click the link in the description. There's plenty of ways, people. You'll also get 20% off an annual premium subscription, so check it out. The last couple of months have been incredibly difficult. I've been working as hard as I possibly can, and I'm so excited for this game to finally come out. So thank you for your patience, and keep your eyes and ears peeled for some exciting new announcements.